different than you. Shit. More money, more problems. I solve them this way to tell you the truth. Allow me to reintroduce myself. Welcome to the cruel world that we all living in. Still chasing them dividends. Whether it's thousands or millions, it's still a hustle, ain't it? The grind is universal.
Peace and welcome to part 3 of Where Are the Slave Ships? I'm Red Tail Hawk, also known as Tavis Sanders. I'd like to welcome my mother, Red Silver Fox, also known as Renee Sanders.
Greetings.
So in this episode, we are going to discuss some of the, final points with respect to the slave ships. Why so little evidence of slave ships, some of the locations, maybe talk about some specific ships that we know of, and also go over, how they can tell what the differences are between different types of ship as they're going over the the shipwrecks themselves. And I guess speaking of shipwrecks, again, this is part 3 of Where Are the Slave Ships, and if you're interested in taking a look at part 1 and part 2, we discuss not only the shipwrecks themselves and where some of them can be found, why, what happened to these ships, once they were done being used, recycling and other things like that. We talked about where the ships were being built, some of the ports, why specific wood was being used. And it also being an economic boost to the United States economy for 100 years, seeing as though they were all being built here.
Well, many of them were being built.
Right. And so with that, let's wrap it up here and let's finish it off with the wrecks themselves. And let's get into some specifics, wrecks that we know are slave wrecks. But, and talk about, I guess, why it's so many first.
Well, why it is not so many.
Oh, okay.
And the thing is that very few slave ship wrecks have been found, and it's for there's a few reasons for it, but basically the biggest reason is that when people are looking for ships, they're looking for treasures, and they know that they're not going to find any treasures on a slave ship.
All right. Money.
Yes, the slave ships were holding cargo and slaves, and that was it. So there wasn't anything valuable, really, that were on slave ships. So they're not going to dive or go looking for slave ships.
Okay.
And one of the most obvious reasons is that they deteriorate. So especially if they get into the water deteriorates very quickly.
Okay.
And then there are things.
Water deteriorates things quickly.
Oh yes, very, very quickly.
Especially wood.
Especially wood, and even iron deteriorates after a while, And so, so really to have these things preserved, we know that it's going to take a lot of money to do that.
Okay, you mean after they actually find the ship, it's the cost of preserving this location so that they can do the research on what it is, where it came from, what else is on the ship, because they're gonna have to dig through sand. They got to do a whole lot of things, but I guess we can get into that now.
Yes. Well, yes, because we know that when these ships go down, that again that they're exposed to water. The ones that sit in water are going to deteriorate. So the only parts that are not going to deteriorate as quickly are the ones or the pieces and parts that get buried in the sand and the sediment underground.
Okay.
So if they get into that, then the sand can preserve the things, but it's still going to deteriorate. So again, the thing is that if they were to bring that out into the open air, then the open air is going to deteriorate the things. So those factors have to be taken into consideration even when they find any of these things.
And again, we're talking about a lot of logistics and a lot of the process of preserving things before you can even get it on shore, so that it can go through the testing and the verification on that level of things.
Yes.
And so again, a lot of money has to be spent in order to do this.
Yes, and over centuries that some of these ships have been buried under the sand then accumulates. Right. And so some of these things are buried under 6 and 8 feet of sand. over the centuries that they have been underground.
2, 3, 400, 500 years sometimes.
Yes, yes. So again, you have to know where they went down, and then you have to know that then you have to have the equipment that is going to find these things buried that far underneath of the sand. And so it's expensive.
Right.
It is expensive.
However, just like you said, the ones that they do find buried under the sand, they can find a lot more of the ship itself, and a lot of the things that was on the ship can be preserved. They can be preserved,
and we are going to discuss some of those things. As we go through when we go through some of the sites, we're going to say how what process was done.
Okay.
With especially one in particular, there was a process, because some of the artifacts that they found are now in a museum.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. I think it's called the Slave Wrecks Project.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so yeah, let's give them some information regarding this ongoing process of organization out there trying to find slave wrecks so that they can document and preserve that part of our history.
Yes, so it is called, again, the Slave Wrecks Project, and it was founded in 2008. And it was founded by researchers from George Washington University, from the Ezekiel Museums of South Africa, the South African Heritage Resource Agency, the United States Park Service, Diving with a Purpose, and the African Center for Heritage Activities. And even with all of those organizations that started this in 2008, the African American History Museum of the United States, that's in DC, joined this also a couple of years later.
Okay, and so if you don't mind me jumping in real fast, you just named a whole lot of organizations that have been actively for what, almost 10 years? Matter of fact, it's 2018 now.
Yes.
For 10 years, actively participating in the research and analysis and fundraising in order to go out there and document this. Why you think?
Slave ships in particular.
Yeah. Okay, we back. Had a little bit of technical difficulties with our logo, but we're going to keep it moving. And we hate to ruin the day, so we're just going to keep that going, right?
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so centered around the Slave Project, and all of these various organizations that have been putting this work in for over 10 years, providing fact-based research and analysis, and also doing a lot of fundraising in order to provide the general public with this type of information. Yet the question floated around in our community for quite a while. However, let's take a look at what these organizations have found and other organizations as far as actual slave wrecks.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I have to put my glasses on.
All right.
Okay, well, one site was discovered in 1991 off of Martinique, and this is in the Gulf, okay, in the islands, and it is a small island where a slave ship went off. Okay, what they found an elephant tusk that was found in the coral, and they're saying that probably marked the site of the slave trade. I'll explain that in a second. Okay. It says that all that remained of the ship itself were an anchor and a short length of chain, together with a hinge from the rudder. All right. Around the ivory tusk, there were a few hundred bricks, but that's all that they found of the ship. And it says that the ship had completely broken up.
Okay, wow. Okay. So, there's a lot of interesting things there that we can touch on as we move further along in the discussion. But one of the things that that jump right out at me is bricks. Why, they shipping bricks? You can make bricks anywhere, right?
Right.
Why ship bricks? But we'll get back, I guess we're getting into that a little bit later. But, we don't want to just dwell, and there's a lot to go over. So let's talk about another site.
Okay. Close to 100 elephant tusks, were found in 1987 at another site, and this one is off of France. It's off of Brittany, France. Okay. Again, they didn't find any trace of the ship itself, but it said that what remained were some cargo, some beads that they used for trade. Okay. a copper bracelet, and Manila, which was a form of trade, a form of money, okay, that was used off of the African coast, that they used as a form of currency off the African coast.
Right. Now, which is also something interesting that we can get into a little bit later on as far as the beads were concerned. But this one is specific.
And also the elephant tusks.
Okay, okay, yeah. Right, well, so again, a lot to talk about. But let's go on. Let's talk about another. Let's just name a few more sites for them before we go.
All right. There was another ship that was found. This ship, as a matter of fact, went down in 1841.
Okay.
And this was found. It was found off of the coast of Australia. No, yes, it was found off the coast of Australia.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But what happened?
Do you want to talk about? Well, go ahead.
Well, let me talk about, let me finish talking about that ship,
Okay.
so that I can explain what happened, okay?
Okay.
It was seized in 1837, all right? The United States Royal Army found the ship when it was engaged in the unlawful trade of slave trade. So in 1837, it was unlawful for them to have the slave trade. So the Army seized the ship, and then they just refitted the ship to be just a regular cargo ship. And then it went back out and as being a cargo ship, but then they later found it off of the coast of Australia.
Okay.
So that's how they know it was that they knew it was a slave ship, because it had been seized and they changed it over.
And so they had documents.
Yes.
So they
yes.
they knew exactly where their ship was.
Yes.
And just to clarify a point, it was the importation of slaves into the United States was illegal.
Yes.
Not slavery itself.
Yes.
However,
we explained that in part 2.
In part 2. So
Yes.
if you want to learn more about that, definitely check out part 2 of Where Are the Slave Ships. And so so let's talk about another site. We got another site to talk about.
Okay.
Where
yes.
Where are the slave ships? What do you mean, where are the slave ships? They everywhere.
Now, this particular slave ship was found off of the coast of Cape Town, Africa. And it was some of these artifacts that are on display in the African American Museum in Washington, D.C.
What?
Okay.
No.
What is
They
interesting?
museums?
Yes. What is interesting about this ship is that it was leaving Africa on its way to the Americas.
Okay.
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 And while it was leaving, it went underwater. Okay. And so they knew exactly where this slave ship was all the time.
So they could actually,
they've known.
And if you're not familiar with this, what was the name of this ship again?
Okay, wait a minute. Let me see what the name of it. The Sao Jose.
The Sao Jose. Okay.
Okay.
That way y'all can check that out. But if you're not aware of that, they actually saved a lot of the slaves that were on that ship at that time.
They saved half of the slaves that were on that. They saved all of the crew.
Of course.
Of course, right.
Hold on, wait a second. The captain didn't go down?
Of course not.
Okay.
Yeah, and they did save half of the slaves.
Okay.
Of course, that was at least part of the cargo.
Right. And we're not making light of it, but sometimes you gotta laugh at this stuff because it's crazy. So nonetheless, they actually knew exactly where this ship was, and so for how many years no one even bothered to do any, because it wasn't important and it wasn't worth any money.
And not only that though, because of its location, the ocean is very violent, very close to the shore. You have your tides that come in and out all of the time.
Okay.
So even when they went down to this ship and they started diving for artifacts and things, a lot of the things were buried under 6 to 8 feet of sand. And when they would retrieve some of the items, they couldn't bring everything at one time,
Okay.
And so some things they would leave. And the thing is that when they went maybe a few days later, it was covered back up with 3 to 4 feet of sand. Because again of the ocean. So
well,
and that is something that you have to take into consideration. Again, this one was very close to shore. It's very easy to get to, but because of the ocean and what happens, it's just difficult. And again, time consuming and a very high monetary cost.
Right. Well, let's talk about some of the things that they found on this particular ship, because it gives credence to what we expect to find on other shipwrecks.
Yes,
slave wrecks.
Yes. Okay, and we can also discuss what we were talking about, the elephant tusks.
Okay,
also.
right, and the beads.
Yes, but what they found on this ship is an iron ballast. Okay, and iron ballasts were used, it says, to offset the relatively light weight of the ship's human cargo.
That's really interesting, which draws us back to the bricks, right? Why are you shipping bricks? To offset the cargo, because human weight is different. First of all, dead weight is different from live weight, and so dead slaves would carry weight differently on the ship than live slaves, just to start.
Or even if you say maybe a 50-pound sack of potatoes, you're packing a whole bunch of those. That weight is going to be less
centralized. First of all, it's not moving around.
Right. And yes, and again, they needed it to balance the ships.
Okay, right. And so one of the things that we're going to be looking for are weights that they would put on these slave ships to balance the cargo, to make sure it doesn't sink.
Yes, yes.
And
right.
I guess a ballast in some places, bricks in other places. Huh?
Right, if you don't have the ballast.
Cheaper, right? Go
yes,
ahead.
yes. Okay, but they also found a wooden pulley block. Okay, they found remnants of shackles, and these were covered, they said, in organic and inorganic material that had built up around them over centuries, being in the sea. Okay. And really, it took them for them to find out that they were even shackles, because they were even deteriorating. Okay. But what they did is that it says that the remains of these fragile shackles could only be identified using either CT scans or X-rays. And when they did the scans, they said that they were able to find the ghost of a shackle that remained in the remnants that they found. Okay. It says the iron is barely there, but what you can see is a clear outline of what once existed as a shackle. Okay.
Yeah, and I see here we also have a quote from one of the divers that's talk about the tides being like a giant washing machine. So you can imagine all of the sand and everything just being moved around consistently over there, and it's just gonna wear everything down. Nothing is going to stay underneath there permanently.
Yes, and they said that even after things have been carefully vacuumed off, within a few hours, the sand had recovered the site, and within a day or so, it says 2 to 3 feet of sand back over the site.
Okay. Wow.
So, and again, it was from this ship where some of these artifacts are being displayed in the African American Museum in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so you can look at those, and I guess to get some historical context, as a part of that tour. All right, so we discussed some of those sites, and let's get into some of the sites that might be a little bit closer for people to get to here in the States. We got a few, one in particular here, a site here in the States that we can give a lot of information
I ain't no different than you, shit. More money, more problems, I solemnly swear to tell you the truth. Allow me to reintroduce myself. Welcome to the cruel world that we all living in. Still chasing them dividends, whether it's thousands or millions. It's still a hustle, ain't it? The grind is universal. Might take muscle to gain the upper hand. Some understand there ain't no perfect picture painted. I do what I gotta do, I ain't no different than you.